Everybody get your hands up.
What's going on, everybody at CSGOStation? My name is Frito, the brand new commentator that's going to be helping out with this channel. Don't be afraid. I know change is scary, but it will be good in this instance. We're still going to be doing all of the series you've come to know and love on this channel, tips, top 5, etc., but I can just add a little bit extra and something different to your subscription box. So starting it off with this commentary today about s1mple, the former Liquid player who left running, sprinting away from his old team, and everyone seems to be more happy about it. But it seems CS is a little bit darker now that Liquid lost its explosive playmaking factor and are far less relevant than they were during s1mple's tenure with the team, which yielded them with a major run that was shocking, and of course the hilarious choke with 15 match points where they ended up losing to LG, who withstood and fought back into get to overtime in 2 maps. Every single commentator that I could think of has weighed in on this subject, so you may want to search around to see what they've said. Thorin has made a video about it, as well as recently an open letter to s1mple encouraging him to work on his personal problems in order to become a great player, not falling victim to the what could have been scenario, teaming up with friends in his comfort zone, telling him that he needs to go get out there and actually work on his social skills just like he worked on his mastery of the game. Moses, before s1mple even left, was saying that he was kind of a redundant item in the team. This is something I'm going to weigh in a lot in a moment. Richard Lewis wrote an article about the inside baseball of the drama behind the scenes. Liquid didn't seem to really support him in the ways that would have facilitated a more comfortable environment. He offered some solutions where they could boot camp in Europe and play better teams so that he could also see his family. Obviously, he seemed pretty uncomfortable living in the team house when everyone else got to see their families, on top of the fact that there was obvious tensions with the team, seeing as he's always going to be a critical teammate, which makes him look like a Michael Jordan-type figure, as Thorin has alluded to. He's the type of guy who will not allow his teammates to slack. He wants to be the best, but what he doesn't see is how his attitude is stopping his team from being able to reach those peaks that they could potentially get to. So he comes out to be a detriment to his team. But in my opinion, I think this is more of a failure on the Liquid organization and the complete lack of coach or in-game leader, a strong-minded presence in order to force this team to congeal under a system. It was pathetic watching Kusta get picked up and have almost no impact in the games they played for months, it felt like. They pick up this new all-star player, Kusta, who's supposedly going to be op presence, a main opper style role, and then it seemed the moment he stepped into Liquid, he was uncomfortable. Either he wasn't allowed the freedom that he had when he was playing an enemy, or it was a brand new system, or maybe it was, as it seems to be murmurs among the players, the things they've said back and forth, maybe it was the stress of having s1mple as a teammate who's going to be critical of your physical play, because it seems s1mple is more the type of guy who is going to be very harsh on your mechanical skill and worry a little bit less on the teamwork aspect, since that's the way he plays, right? He's constantly putting his team in a bad position where he jumps out into some strange engagement and going for some audacious play where he has to shoot his way out of it rather than going for the smart team play. So that's what he values more as a player. But what you needed in this situation is to have a coach, somebody who could step in and say, is our op guy. We need to structure the team somewhat around his play style, because what ended up happening was s1mple would criticize Kusta and it would make Kusta play worse. Kusta was forced into some play styles that he seemed to not be comfortable with, and then he was essentially a non-factor, forcing them to play from a position where if Hiko wasn't clutching late rounds, or if s1mple wasn't making these Herculean efforts in order to propel them to win rounds, the team just didn't work, and that makes no sense. And it's 100% based upon the lack of leadership. Why? Because you can't just let these players walk all over each other in this way. You can't let aspects of your team go unfulfilled like Kusta and just be a waste of space. Think about it in any other sport that you've ever watched. Counter-Strike, the way you have to coach it, the way you have to command a dedication and responsibility from your players works exactly like any other sport you can think of, whether it's football, the NFL, basketball, whatever. When you pick up a player who's kind of a tech player, who has a limited skill set, like multiple of the Liquid players did. s1mple was this explosive, crazy player. Kusta could make those explosive plays at lower levels of play with an AWP. Hiko, not doing too great early round, in my opinion, but is a clutch master, and you can write him on the board for 1 or 2 amazing clutches every round, or every map, rather. You need someone with the focus to be able to look at all the strengths and weaknesses of these players and coach them into playing better, which Liquid clearly lacked. And I don't know if I want to point the finger directly at GB James, the guy who didn't call a timeout, and the entire time LG was storming back for 15 match points to take it to overtime on 2 separate maps. Maybe it's not his responsibility, because maybe he's not the type of coach that is going to do the types of things I'm saying. But maybe this is ultimately something that speaks more to where Counter-Strike is as an esport right now. We need this to be a norm for the coach role to be taken more seriously, because it's yet to really come there. There's far too many players who, either because of pride or because of the amount you get paid to play, choose to play instead of coach. Now, maybe that can start to change with NiP having Threat completely change their fortunes around, where they look to be just falling into the abyss of tier 2 to now be arguably a top 5 team in the world. That coach position needs to be much more coveted, and it needs to be paid more, because if Liquid allocated the correct resources to put a coach in place that could actually congeal that Liquid team, they would be in the position that NiP is in right now. If they could actually, and I'm not saying into a threat system either, because I don't think that's the correct answer. NiP badly needed a coach that could teach them the fundamentals of CS and how to play smarter. I don't think that's what Liquid needed. I think what Liquid needed was the ability and flexibility to allow these star players to have the freedom to play that explosive style CS. Because if you look at the way s1mple performed in his past teams, I would argue he was utilized even better when he was on Flipside and HR, because he had teams that used him properly. Blade is a much better leader in that regard than anybody in the Liquid organization, because what he would do is allow s1mple to Olaf it up a bit, to just say, you go and make individual plays over there, and the rest of us are going to play as a team. And that allowed Flipside to make some clutch upsets against top tier teams. Or you can take his tenure on HR, which was filled with individualistic players who can make individual plays. That's the ways you can actually structure a team that can work with s1mple. But no, all these teams are happy to have s1mple leave, but yet are worse off for it. What we need is the mentality of a champion in these coach positions. Hire me, for God's sakes, and we can go all Remember the Titans up and down every single LAN. It's exactly like that movie, and if you haven't seen it, it's about a high school American football team where the coach was African American in a time where racism was still pretty big in America, and there was a bunch of black players and a bunch of white players who didn't get along. Throughout the time of the movie, they get to know each other. They start to listen to the Supreme, ain't no mountain high, ain't no valley. There's all these team bonding experiences that grow them as a team, and that's the most important thing you can do as a coach. At the very least, if you're not going to get these guys to like each other, they have to respect each other, and they have to hate you, the coach, more than they hate each other, because otherwise you just have this self-destructive team environment that gets you nowhere, and then s1mple's constantly floating from team to team because nobody has the willpower to force this system to work, and it's pathetic. And as a Counter-Strike fan, I'm sick and tired of seeing this talent get tossed to the side because players want to be comfortable. Adren made a video the other day where he talks to ESEA saying that s1mple has a lot of maturing to do. You know what's mature? sucking up your pride and playing with a toxic teammate in order to win, and having the power to be able to either control those situations or take it on yourself. Because Adren, it doesn't matter if s1mple is the worst player to play with ever. If you are going to be the leader, it's on your watch to command the ability to make these factors work in the team. And if you're not doing that, just throwing your hands up and saying I can't work under these conditions makes you a worse leader. And that's something you have to take as a responsibility for yourself, instead of everybody just pointing to s1mple as the problem, which I admit he is, but it's a two-way street is the thing. If you want to actually win, change this up. And that's been it for me, guys. My name is Frito. Be sure to like the video, share it with your friends, and subscribe.